Welcome to the Content Repurposer podcast, where we explore different ways how authors can repurpose their book's content for greater impact. I'm your host, Pooja Arshanapally, and today we're focusing on the author, Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is an entrepreneur, investor, author, and podcaster known for his approaches to productivity, self-improvement, and lifestyle design. But he is most known for his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. But before he was an author, he started an internet-based nutritional supplement business called Brain Quicken. While he was working 14-hour days at his company, he was frustrated by being overworked and the lack of free time, which made him want to take a 3-week sabbatical to Europe, which then led to the development of his streamline system. So, published in 2007, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, a book about redesigning your work and lifestyle to maximize efficiency and freedom. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the main concepts of the book. The book challenges the traditional notions of work and encourages readers to design a lifestyle that prioritizes time and mobility over money alone. Ferriss presents a 4-step process called DEAL, and it's an acronym. So D is definitions. So determine your goals and what an ideal lifestyle looks like for you. E is for effectiveness over efficiency. So focus on the 20% of tasks that produce 80% of the results and just eliminate the rest of the tasks that is not pushing the needle forward. A is automate. So once you've eliminated the non-essential tasks, the next step is to automate it as much as possible. And then the last is L, which is liberate. So this is the final step about freeing yourself from the traditional work structures and gaining more control over your time and location. He also presents the concept of mini retirements. So instead of deferring your life enjoyment to retirement, take frequent and small breaks throughout your career to travel and pursue passions that you would have thought to pursue when you retire. And I think now this book and the concepts behind this book is now acceptable today. But at the time that it was published, the only concept that we had for work was the traditional 9-to-5 job. I think we were all sold this specific way on how you should live a life, which is to go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, and so on. And I've only read this book recently, so when I first had my first corporate job, I realized this type of concept of working a 9-to-5 job was a little misleading to me. When people said working a 9-to-5 job, most people assume you work 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then you have the weekends off. And from my experience, that was not my experience at all. That was not the expectation. And soon realized that at that job, working 40 hours is the minimum that I worked. And people expect you to work 40 hours, but until the deadlines are hit and the tasks are done, then you are considered a value employee. And I'm not saying that those type of guidelines are wrong, because you should hit deadlines and tasks that are assigned to you. But I would say that if you had it drilled in you from an early age that a 9-to-5 job is a 9-to-5 job, you might be taken back on the advice that was given to you prior. And then when you finally get your first job and that's not at all how it is perceived, it just comes off misleading. And I'm not saying that everyone's experience is like that, but I can definitely tell you that a lot of people could resonate with what I'm trying to say. Also, let's say you could get the same task done less than 40 hours a week. I think in the corporate job, if you're not able to get less than 40 hours a week, then you weren't doing enough work. And even if you were doing the same amount of work as someone else. So a lot of the times people were punished for working faster and more effective. And in my experience, a lot of people would lie about how much time it would take them to get things done so they wouldn't get overworked compared to their peers. And it felt like corporate jobs punished people with expertise and efficiency, and it felt more of a punishment for people who wanted to work hard. Obviously, again, I'm not saying that this is every corporate job, but I know that there's just a lot of people who can relate to what I'm saying or relate to this experience. And I felt like the perception for a corporate job of being a hard worker was far more superior than actually being one. So the 4-hour work week hit the New York Times bestseller list, and it spent at least 4 years on that list, as well as it has been translated into over 40 different languages. So the second book he published was The 4-Hour Body, and this is a comprehensive guide to optimizing physical health performance through unconventional methods. So the book offers strategies on quick fat loss, muscle gain, and overall body recomposition. He emphasizes finding the smallest changes that produces the biggest results, applying the 80-20 principle, but to health and fitness. So it's kind of going back to the 4-hour work week where he talks about the 80-20 principle. He introduces the slow carb diet, and this is a plan designed for fat loss and muscle gain. And this book also covers various exercise techniques for building strength, endurance efficiently and effectively as well. And I remember in one of his podcast episodes, he chose this book intentionally because he's gotten a lot of advice to use the 4-hour work week and find new ways to repurpose the content, such as public speaking events, masterminds, courses. But he decided to go a different route and focus on fitness because if it flopped, then he could always go back to the original book. But if it worked, it meant that he could extend his image and expertise beyond his initial book. And this would give him the freedom to talk about anything. So this book also hit the New York Times bestseller, and it remained on the list for 3 years, but probably more. So the next book he published was The 4-Hour Chef, and this was published in 2012. While cooking is the main focus, he uses culinary techniques to demonstrate meta learning, which is a step-by-step process that can be applied to master any skill. This could be from learning a new language to improving athletic performance. So this book is structured in 5 parts. The first is meta learning, so techniques to double your learning potential. The second is the domestic, basic cooking techniques and recipes. The third is the wild, self-sufficient skills like hunting, foraging, and survival. The fourth is the scientist, so exploring modern cuisines and food science. And the last is the professional, so insights on how world-class performers excel in their fields. Throughout this book, he incorporates tips and tricks from various experts, including chess prodigies, renowned chefs, professional athletes, but the goal is to provide readers with a choose-your-own-adventure guide to rapid learning that extends beyond the kitchen. While the book doesn't really contain recipes or cooking instructions, its scope is much broader. It's designed to challenge readers, encourage them to question their limitations, and to provide tools for mastering any skill. And so from this book, The 4-Hour Chef, I remember from one of his podcast episodes, this book burned him out, and he decided to take a different route and do a different avenue. He took a detour from publishing books and started into podcasting. So in 2014, his podcast was called The Tim Ferriss Show. So the podcast started as long-form interviews with successful people from various fields, including business, sports, entertainment, academia. He aimed to deconstruct tactics, tools, and routines that listeners could apply in their own life based on the interviews he's had. By starting his podcast in 2014, he was relatively early in the podcasting, which helped him establish a strong presence in this medium. So the next book that he wrote in 2016 was Tools of Titans. Tools of Titans is a book that is essentially a compilation of insights and advice from many high-achieving individuals. And a lot of these people are from the interviews he's had on his podcast and in his personal life. The book talks about best tactics, routines, and habits of world-class performers. It's divided into 3 main sections: healthy, wealthy, and wise, reflecting on different aspects of life that advice covers. But this book didn't come from the 4-hour work week. This book was repurposed and inspired from his podcast. Then he decided to publish a follow-up book called Tribe of Mentors in 2017. This book is a collection of advice and insights for over 130 high achievers across various fields. He asks each person the same set of 11 questions, resulting in different perspectives on life, work, and success. The main goal that most readers can take away from this is having a diverse array of life advice strategies from successful individuals, allowing readers to find insights that resonate with them and apply these lessons to their own life. And it's just a reference book that readers can go and return for inspiration or guidance on different aspects of life and career. And I know in this episode, I spent a lot of time focusing on his books, but he has also repurposed his books into different mediums and different formats besides his podcast. Besides his interviews, he also has created short videos, and they're more explainer videos on different concepts and different parts of his book. So, for example, there's a video called The 2 Most Important Habits for Fat Loss. And this video could easily be referred back to his book, The 4-Hour Body. He also was a public speaker and spoke often about the topics of his book. He has given multiple TED Talks, including one titled Why You Should Define Your Fears Instead of Your Goals. And a lot of them refer back to multiple of his books. He's given multiple talks at Google Web Summit, Harvard Business School, and MIT as well. But besides public speaking, he also created a show called The Tim Ferriss Experiment in 2014. And each episode, Tim Ferriss attempted to learn a new complex skill in a very short amount of time, typically just in a few days. So you could see Tim Ferriss trying to master various skills such as poker, parkour, professional poker, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, drumming, and a lot more. The show followed Tim Ferriss as he learned from experts and then attempted to perform the skill at a high level. This show was an extension of the rapid learning techniques that he wrote in his books, specifically in The 4-Hour Chef. And this ran for 13 episodes, and I'm pretty sure you can search it and find all the episodes on YouTube. So I know I covered a lot, but there's still so much content you can find out about Tim Ferriss, and I probably have only scratched the surface. But I think one thing you can take away from this episode is when you think of Tim Ferriss, you don't only think of his one book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Some people might know him from his podcast or other things that he has done. So what he has done really well is he's created a brand for himself instead of people just knowing him for only his book. So that's all for today's episode of the Content Repurposer podcast. Subscribe to this podcast if you found this episode helpful, and then join us next time as we continue to explore how authors can repurpose their book's content for greater impact.